from your favourite book today, Stephen.
Yes, it is. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 2. But I'm going to read 1, 2 and 3.
Oh, are you?
Because I like it.
I said it was his favourite.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Here's verse 2. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you may not grow weary and lose heart.
Don't grow weary. Don't lose heart. It sounds a bit like yesterday.
It does a little bit like yesterday, but the brilliant thing is about Jesus being the pioneer and perfecter of faith. The thing I love about this verse, or this passage, and about Hebrews at all, a lot of it, is that here the focus on Jesus is not about him rescuing us and about salvation. And most of our focus on Jesus is about that often, and what he's done for us, what he did on the cross, so that we might have a relationship with God, so that we can be rescued and redeemed and restored and reconciled.
And all that's great.
And all that's wonderful.
That's amazing.
But here, I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
Here, it's talking about how Jesus is the model for how to live, because it's all about how do you endure, how do you persevere when life gets tough, so you don't grow weary and lose heart, and saying, look to Jesus as the pioneer and perfecter of faith. Great words, because it's talking about how do you live the faithful life when things are not going the way you'd like them to, when the world still has sin in it. How do you actually survive? How do you live? And the writer here is saying, Jesus, he's the pioneer, perfecter. He's worked out how to live the faithful life in this world.
And it's an oxymoron, because it says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross and scorning its shame, and then sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So it wasn't just a walk into glory, sort of sit down on the throne.
It was through death and suffering and pain and all the rest of it.
Tough, and we're doing it tough often. So he gets it. He gets our toil and trouble and continual difficulty with things, because it's something he had to do too.
And the writer's saying he's the one who perfected this way of doing it. He's the one who pioneered it, perfected it. Yeah, sure, other people have given us glimpses of it, and you get glimpses of it in the Old Testament, but Jesus epitomised it all in a profound and deep way, and called to follow him in that. And so that means whether we're facing suffering, persecution, whether we're suffering
physical illness,
whatever it might be, and even a sense of the distance of God. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus never gave up on trusting God. That's the whole point. Even though he cries that lament and a sense of distance, he never gave up on God.
And God never gave up on Jesus.
And God never gave up.
Too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in that, we have got an example of how we live here and now in our difficulties. And and God has promised that the other end of all of that, God will bring resurrection. He will bring life to us. And so therefore we're called to endure.
So when you're saying he will bring life to us, a lot of people interpret that as being, we'll have life when we die. So we've got to put up with this tough, whatever it is in this life, but eventually it'll be better. But can it be better here?
Well, it's true to say, yes, God has promised life after death, but life after death, not just physical death, but life after death in our world right now. I think the principle and the power of the resurrection is at work now, just as much now as it is through death. And I'm sure it's true in our lives. We've faced many deaths in terms of financially and letting go, shifting to Tasmania and letting go of what God had given us beforehand, a whole host of things where it felt like we were dying to stuff, and yet God has brought life back to us. And that's the principle. So it's both and. Not either or, it's both and.
Yeah.
And it's calling for faith, and particularly this one, it's calling for endurance now, and trusting that God will bring life to them in the present right now, and yes, after death as well. So this is my favourite. I love this. And
said so.
Yeah, and it's really important for us to look to Jesus as a model of how to live.
Yep. Let's go and do that.
Yep.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.